As you walk through the hallways passing by students, you may wonder what milestones have shaped their lives. You cross paths with them every day, and yet you cannot figure out what it is that sets them apart. What you are not aware of is the traumas they may have endured in order to be walking here next to you in this moment. Nathan Farag is a freshman at Liberty University who lived in the center of Cairo during the Egyptian Revolution. Farag said during this time he learned what it meant to stand up against injustice and trust that God would be with his family as he actively protected them. Farag's family had moved from America to Egypt shortly before the revolution. It was once they were in Cairo that Farag says they had to become proactive in protecting themselves against danger.
There were certain events that happened maybe 2 blocks, a block away from my house. So the revolution happening while I was there, it caused me to be an active part of the revolution.
According to a Liberty University history professor, Dr. Benjamin S. Swine, the revolution arose from certain groups of people getting fed up with government injustices.
That period of time in 2011 really was started by a group known as the Kafaya, which was Egyptian Arabic for enough, that really spawned the movement in Egypt and began protests there.
As Swine says, Egypt has been on the edge of experiencing another revolution, and social media is what helped push them just far enough.
People were gathering, again, talking on Facebook, Twitter, different things, coming together, and from that they realized a common discontent with some of the major points of the Mubarak regime.
Farag said the revolution began with peaceful protests, but eventually this led to riots erupting.
We would go out into the main square, which was called Tahrir Square, and you're out in the square and it's literally a couple million people out there and you're protesting in chants. But then it got to the point where you have to physically defend your own freedom. When one night the government ended up opening up a bunch of jails just to cause chaos and wreak havoc on the streets.
Farag was 14 years old when he and his dad were forced to stay outside to protect their family from danger.
So there would be nights where we would lock ourselves in the house and board up their houses, put like big pieces of furniture in front of the doors, in front of the windows, or me and my dad would go outside and we would stand with knives taped to the end of sticks.
Farag says as a Christian, he had an obligation to protect his family as well as stand up against oppression. He said protecting the afflicted is not only a right, but a responsibility.
When the oppressed started to rise up, I think it was our moral obligation to break that law and to go out and to protest in the streets.
Farag and the Egyptian people desired to end the corruption in the government. As Swine says, though the citizens were hoping for improvement, President Hosni Mubarak only made things worse. According to S. Swine, Mubarak grew more oppressive when he was faced with opposition and discontent. Protesting was a way of fighting back, as Swine says.
This was a way of sort of bringing people together and almost daring him to do something against such massive numbers. I mean, we were talking about hundreds of thousands of people showing up.
Day and night, the streets were filled with protesters. Farag said his biggest fear during this time was not being able to protect his family. Though he could stand guard and protect them most of the day, when he went to sleep, he was defenseless.
Then when you go to sleep at night, all the fears that you're talking about, how do you stay alive in the night when you're worried and you can hear gunshots out in the distance? And I think that was my biggest fear, not in the sense of my own life, but having a younger sister and my mom in the house too, worrying about like what happens when someone comes into the house and like, oh, we don't know what they're going to do to us.
Farag says his fight against the fear and defenselessness was prayer. Though they would physically guard their home, he believed that God was their primary source of protection.
Be in constant prayer and constant vigilance at the same time of if someone walks through our street, we know they're not going to go into our homes and attack us.
Eventually, the conflict began to subside, and his family decided to move back to America. Farag says they were able to move knowing that they did not flee out of fear, but for school and work-related purposes. Looking back on the revolution, Farag says his faith is what gave him an endurance in the midst of uncertainty.
My faith is one of the things that actually got me through the entire revolution.
Though Farag and his family made it safely through the revolution, Farag said it certainly took some readjusting.
2 or 3 years following the revolution, I would have like a lot of traumatic events that were caused by that main traumatic event of the revolution. So the revolution would scar me in a way that all the events in my life afterwards for the next 3 years felt just like a bad event in my life because I was so caught up still in the past of the revolution.
Though Farag knew he was safe, there were certainly still sounds and triggers that would bring him back to the trauma he faced in Cairo.
I wouldn't be able to sleep through the night because I would hear a bang. And I would think, oh, the house is under attack, or oh, there's gunshots going off across the street, but I lived in a 8-house neighborhood.
Farag said with counseling and time, he was able to see the positive that came out of his experience in the revolution.
The way that it affected me is more positive than it was negative, in the sense that now I'm able to take that experience that I've had in my life and do good with it when it comes to witnessing to others.
Once again, Farag says how his faith has helped him not only overcome a trial, but to use his experience for good. Farag says as he continues to walk through the halls of Liberty University, he is constantly wondering what traumas others have endured. Each and every student you pass has a story. If you just stop and ask them, you may find that their story will change your life. For WQLU News, I'm Jay Goebel.